Welcome to Coinology, the podcast. Hey, welcome guys to another episode of Coinology. I am here today with none other than Marquel Russell. Thank you so much, Marquel. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. I've been hearing about you for a number of years. I think you and I even had a few conversations prior to the pandemic, and I've been watching you. You are a beast.
Thank you.
And so I'm definitely honored to have you here today.
I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, I mean, everyone I think knows a little bit about Marquel, and I think the piece that they know is that you are considered the go-to guy for lead generating, right?
Yep.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically, it's kind of it was a long, tough road, right? So I've always been an entrepreneur, and I jumped out in the streets early, so that was my first entrepreneurial endeavors.
Okay, in the streets?
Selling drugs, and that was kind of my path early on.
Okay.
And then I got introduced to network marketing, so legitimate type of businesses.
Okay.
And I didn't really know how to grow it. Like they tell you to go go do home parties, do home meetings, stuff like that. But they don't really tell you how to market and attract people to you. And I did that in the club promotions world, but it was like hustle, go out, pass out flyers, stuff like that. And in the streets, of course, you out giving out samples and you kind of doing your own thing there. But it's like, okay, how do you take people who are complete strangers, they find you on this internet thing, and they pay you money? So I was obsessed with like how to figure it out. And when I started learning it, it wasn't nobody black really teaching it. It was only like older white guys, like all the guys who we studied, like older white guys. So I was like, man, number one, I can learn this from me and our company. But if I can learn this, break it down, synthesize it, and then teach it to our people as well, what could that do for our
Community
as a whole?
and being able to actually make some money at this thing,
100%.
right? No longer looking at things as mom and pops. I want to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but let's go back. Okay. You said something very interesting, right? You started out in the streets. Where are you from?
I'm from here. I'm from Atlanta.
Okay, what part of Atlanta?
So it's interesting. I had a opportunity to literally be on every side. So I went from Bankhead, Martin Luther King, Hamilton Road. I've also been like out a little bit from here, so like closer to Six Flags. The east side a little bit, College Park. So I've been able to like hit all around the city to kind of navigate.
So you are true. So that what was the girl that said something about you not Atlanta if
Right.
You know what was her name again? Amaretta, right?
Yeah.
Sound like a margarita, Amaretta.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you recognize what she's talking about in that song? You think what you
I
think?
get it, but she's younger though, right? So it's more so recently people start saying like, all right, I'm here. But it's like some people say, okay, I'm from South Side Atlanta, so that's College Park. So I don't think that technically, because it's people who live in College Park who she kind of categorized not from Atlanta, but then you also say you got to be from Grady. So it's like people who lived in College Park, who grew up in College Park, but they were born in Grady. So it's kind of like, so are they not Atlanta now? Cause if they were born in Grady, but
does it even matter?
But does it even matter?
Right. I think it was a cute marketing ploy. I think you probably
great.
know that, right? Because I don't even think neither one of us would know who she is or even having a conversation had she not done that. So that was brilliant, right?
Brilliant.
It's brilliant. And so we're going to talk a little bit back on the streets. One of the things I've always said is that I think some of the most brilliant minds started on the street, and many are in prison right now and never saw their full potential.
Correct.
Right? Because I personally believe in order to create, manage, market, and maintain an enterprise, even if it's illegal, you have to still know the mechanics of business.
For sure.
Right? So how did you decide that wasn't for me?
So it was really the exposure, right? So it was the exposure, and then I realized that, because I always wanted to do something different. So even when I was in the streets, it was interesting. So when I was in 9th or 10th grade, I started an entertainment company. So because I knew people who rapped, I knew people who did beats. So I started, but I didn't do either. And I didn't never want to be famous. So I was like, okay, I can take these two, I can start a label, and then I can just push it because I had to hustle. I can get out and talk and stuff like that, right? I can talk when necessary. So I put that together. When I was 19, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I also, at school, how some people are known to be like, they play sports or they're cheerleaders. Or I was the guy who had the weed. So everybody knew if they needed the weed,
to come
they
see you.
See me, right? So I knew everybody. I knew people who were considered popular. I knew people who were considered street. I knew people who were considered like lame or whatever. So I kind of navigated all the different circles, right? Which was beneficial. So I went full time in the streets, dropped out of high school in 10th grade, jumped out in the streets, because I was like, none of this ain't really making sense to me.
Back up, dropped out in 10th grade. Yeah. I want y'all to hear this.
Yeah.
10th grade.
So I dropped out in 10th grade. I got a 9th grade education. I got a GED. So long story short, because at this point I was doing algebra 2, right? So it's like, I wanted to be a millionaire ever since I was a child, but I was like, okay, here's how you do it. You go to the NBA or NFL. Like, nobody ain't really talking about how to build businesses and stuff like that. So when I got to this point, and I'm like, okay, I don't see how algebra 2 is going to get me to where I want to be. Like, solving for X and all that, none of that stuff made sense. So I just stopped going, and I was making more money than a lot of my teachers. So I was like, this ain't really making sense to me no more. So I stopped going, went to the streets. I'm full time at this point. And I end up going back and forth to jail. That's kind of come with that life, right? And when I was 19, 19 was an interesting year for me. Fun fact, we talked about fun facts earlier. 19, I was not born. My birthday was my 19th birthday. I was in jail. And I had my first son while I was 19 in jail. The first time I met my first son was in visitation.
Well, let me say something that you just said that I think was important. You had a fire in you as a kid.
Right.
You knew it was something else.
Yeah.
But exposure.
Yeah.
We lacked exposure. And because we lacked exposure, you only did what you knew to do. It was either sports or drugs.
Or get a job.
Right? And most people say, okay, I can flip burgers at McDonald's and I'm never going to make the type of money that Marquel was making on the corner. So that's why a lot of the kids decide the latter. And so, again, I want to stress that because there's so many brilliant, they just never, like I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, there was no one doing what I do now growing up. So if somebody were to ask me, did I always know I was going to do this? I could not say truthfully yes, because I didn't know this existed. I didn't see it. It required me to get out of the environment that I was in to have exposure. But again, brilliance, right? Because where you sit right now, we're going to get to where you are right now, could have been extinguished at 17 or 18. No one would have known the brilliant mind of Marquel if life didn't push you into a different direction, right? So you became a father at 19.
Father at 19.
Okay. And you were in prison in jail at that time.
Jail, yeah.
Okay, so it's a difference between jail and prison.
A big difference.
Yeah. But I heard the jails in the metro Atlanta area ain't nothing to play with.
Nah, for sure.
I heard, is it DeKalb or Gwinnett? One of them they say is no joke.
Yeah, in Rice Street. Like all
Which
of them.
one is it?
I mean, you technically go back into slavery. So a lot of people in the city, like a lot of, especially like younger cats, they argue about, I was on Rice Street or I was in Clayton County. And you're like, you was in Clayton County, you went on Rice Street. It's like, bro, you were in jail.
I heard Gwinnett is no joke.
Yeah, it's like, none of them are no joke. It's
I heard.
You got to be in a door at a certain time. You eat what they give you. You can dress a certain way. Like, none of it is no joke.
So when you were 19, did you think this was just going to be my life?
So when I always knew I was going to. So even when I was I got out of jail when I was at 19, and I was like, I'm gonna do this job thing because I got a son. So I'm like, let me get 2 jobs. So one of the jobs that I got was, I didn't get 2, but I ended up getting a job right here on Bankhead at Petro.
Okay.
You get off right there, and I was changing oil and tires on 18-wheelers. I did that for like 2 or 3 weeks, but I was covered in oil every day. So I went back into the streets, and I was like, I'm gonna take this money and I'm gonna go all in with this record label thing.
Okay.
So I ran some money up. I bought I rented a hair salon. It was like a storefront, and we stripped it all out and we turned it into a studio. And I had one of my homies bring all his equipment up there, and we ran the studio there, right? So I knew it was gonna be something, and I was like, where I'm from, it's like you get money and you go into the music world, you can rap. So that was gonna be, that was my play, because I didn't really know no better. But then, of course, ran into some other opportunities by just getting into motion. Does that make sense?
Exposure. Yeah. Again, exposure. Somebody saw something in you.
For sure.
Yeah. So okay. So we get past that. You open up so again, serial entrepreneur. You knew it was something else out there for you.
Yeah.
but the exposure.
Yeah.
You still, we lacked exposure. Okay, so we opened up the beauty salon, and then how do you get into network marketing? What happened there?
So I was actually in the club one night. So I had been out running around all day. One of my homies was doing an album release party, and I told him I was gonna come through. But when you out all day, sometimes you get to the point you're like, you know what, I'm gonna take it in. But I was like, you know what, I told him I was gonna come through. I want to, be a man of my word. So let me at least go through and show my face. So I went through, had some drinks, smoking. That kind of was my thing. Man. And then a guy, he thought I was somebody else. He thought I was one of my bros, actually. I knew his face. He knew my face. So he walks up to me. They kicking it or whatever. He like, hey, man. We start talking. He was like, hey, how many people got a cell phone? And I was like, well, everybody I know got a cell phone. And he was like, well, what if every time they paid their bill, you got paid? And I was like, well, that'll be dope. And he was like, well, we just linked up with this new opportunity. One of my mentors going to be in town this week. They're looking for some other people to expand in the area. So it might be a great opportunity. So I'm like, all right, bet. And I ain't never been one to turn down an opportunity. So I'm like, cool. So went to this meeting, met him like a Wednesday. Me and one of my bros rode out there, saw the presentation, and they was like, hey, you can get to it, and they'll get to it, and they'll get to it, and they'll get to it. And they making millions of dollars, driving fancy cars, sipping pina coladas on the beaches of the world, all this different type of stuff, right? So I'm like, oh, I can easily get to. That's easy. And one of my bros was with me, so I'm like, I already got one. I paid half of his way to get in, half of my whole way to get in. And at this point, I didn't even have a bank account. So I'm like, hey, y'all take cash? It's $500. Y'all take cash? And they was like, well, no, you can't. We don't do cash.
Right.
You got to have a card. So they had to show me like the prepaid card play and all that. So that's how I got introduced to network marketing.
So how far did you go to the top? I mean, how far did you do?
So when I first got in, all my homies was telling me they went in, they cool on it. Some of my homies who I used to be with every day stopped answering my phone call after I showed them.
I can imagine. You one of the ones I would have been dodging.
Yeah, for sure. So they went totally ghost on me, like my homies. And I almost quit, actually. My mom, God rest her soul, she was like I showed it to her, because she's always been a hustler. So I showed it to her and was like, what you think about this? Because it's for some gain. She was going to peep it. So what you think? So she watched the video, hit me back, and she was like, well, if you market yourself, it can work. So I was locked in on it. I tried to get my grandma on a security service that we were selling. Couldn't get her through. So I'm like, man, I don't know. So I'm like, it was just $500. I ain't tripping. I'll get that back. So these guys who signed me up kept following up, trying to help me. And I'm like, well, I'm from...
Nobody don't help you. Yeah. But one thing you did see early on, and people need to see this now in business, friends and family. If you're building a business off of friends and family, you're going to starve.
And you're in trouble.
You're in trouble, right?
100%.
So one of the things you saw very early on is you needed to pivot out of that, right?
100%.
And so let me just ask you this. Were you considered one of the leaders in that business eventually?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And the reason why I bring that up is because successful people, they tend to rise to the top in everything they touch. It could be different industries and different things, but when you have a certain DNA, it doesn't matter.
That's true.
Right? So again, you were the guy in high school, right? Then now you're the guy in network marketing, right? And now you pivot out of network marketing, and what was next?
So when I went from network marketing, and network marketing led me into the online world, because I wanted to figure out how do I grow this business. And one of my team members sent me this link, and she was like, this video was like, hey, here's how you build your network marketing business without doing home parties, without doing home meetings. The marketing was incredible. He was hitting all the pain points. I'm like, oh, this is good. So I watched 4 videos, and then he was like, hey, buy this ebook, and I'll break it down even further. And it was $40. At this time, I had never bought none online before. I didn't even know this stuff exists. So I read this sales letter probably like 100 times. And I went and put some money on my prepaid card, went back and bought the book for $40. And then, you get hit with all the upsells.
Stop. You believed and you invested.
For sure.
Most of us lack belief, and we will not invest in ourselves.
Right.
So keep going. I just want to make sure I highlight that.
For sure, 100%. So I did it, and then they had all the upsells. So I'm like, I don't got enough of my card. So I had to go load my card, do all that again. But anyway, I bought it, and that introduced me to direct response marketing, right? Like how to get leads, how to attract people, how do you grow on an online. And I'm like, man, these white boys making all this money online. And it's like, and they going to show me
Grant Cardone's, Tony Robbins. Crazy money.
And they going to show me how to do it in a course for a few $100s.
Did you believe that?
I mean, I was like, I ain't got nothing to lose.
So how did you know it wasn't a scam?
I didn't.
Because, a lot of people want to always say network marketing is a scam. And I'm going to tell you it's not. I'm not a network marketer, but I did put my head in the ring about a couple of years ago. And I was disappointed that I did not know about it before. I'm not doing it right now. But what I would say is that it's very smart for those like us who have the influence and also understand the dynamics for success, because it is residual income that can continue to hit over and over. And I was like, damn, I wish I knew about this earlier, right? So I think a lot of people have been fooled into thinking that things are scams because we don't understand it.
For sure. The biggest thing network marketing did for me was introduce me to personal development, right? It introduced me to the Jim Rohns and the Les Browns, and you mentioned the Tony Robbins. So it's like just the personal growth and self-development. That introduced me to a whole new world, right? And I was obsessed with it, like the Miles Monroes. And I'm like, these guys just think different.
But let me ask you this. Let's be transparent about it. How did they respond to you?
My people?
So the Tony Robbins, the Grant Cardones, the Les Brown, because see, to me, you are very similar to them, but for today's age. You got the golds.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Hip hop.
Yep.
How did they respond to you? Did they originally open arms, say, okay, we're going to give you the formula, or was it a difficult road?
Great question. So the cool thing is, like, I don't know how they would have responded in person, but like since the stuff was online, they didn't really know.
They didn't know
who was buying it anyway, right? So it's kind of like, you ever read the book The Spook Who Sat by the Door? So I kind of have taken that approach my whole career, without even realizing it.
So let's expound on that a little bit for our listeners.
Sure.
So let's talk about the spook that sat by the door.
So the spook who sat by the door technically is, the brother was like a gangbanger. I think it's from Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. And he got a job with the feds, basically. So he was able to go in and learn the game, and then he was able to come back and teach his homies from the hood the game, so they can kind of move how they needed to move. So
the talent intent.
The talent intent.
You learning, and you're making sure to pull those behind you.
For sure. Going. So I was learning the game, and I was like, man, if I can take this, because at first I was like, who's gonna listen to me? Black, dropped out of high school, and all these cats.
The typical excuse that people use to make themselves feel good about being a failure.
For sure.
Right? 100%. You had every reason to be able to use, dropped out, was in jail, teenage dad, right? Former drug dealer. You didn't let any of those things stop you.
Right.
You became the spook that sat by the door, right?
100%.
So keep going.
So that was my so I started getting it, and I started teaching it. And I started realizing that it's a whole world of people who have no idea what this is.
So you had friends that were like you that still wanted. So because a lot of people have misperceptions to think that our black men are lazy.
Right.
Don't have any desire to learn, don't have a desire to want to work. And you're saying that you had a whole group of guys out there that was out there and they wanted to know, they was hungry for it.
So it wasn't my homies from where I come from.
Okay.
It was like just the people who was online trying to figure this stuff out.
Okay, so you had to take yourself out of that environment.
Yeah, for sure. So like all my homies, and these like my bros still, like, but it's like none of them really came into this world with me. Some of them kind of dabbled a little bit when I was doing network marketing, but I don't do business with really none of the people who I grew up with, like in this particular business.
Do they understand?
Not really. A lot of people still think I do network marketing.
Really? You know what's funny too is God rest his soul, my brother, I was trying to tell him this. He passed away back in 2019, but one of the things I continued to try to get him to do was to change his environment. And, one thing I will tell you is that, most African-American men are very much about, these are my homies. I rock with them from inception to that. And I was trying to explain to him, changing your environment could potentially save your life.
100%.
Right? Unfortunately, that was not his situation. However, something triggered in you that said, I need to shift.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because I done been like, I work with a lot of the young homies now who still out moving around. So I know from experience, like you can be in the club 100 deep, but when you go in the courtroom, it's just you.
It's just you.
Ain't nobody there. Ain't nobody. When I was getting locked up, when nobody reaching out, like making sure I had money on my books and checking on my mom and my son, like it was me making sure when nobody like coming down there, I wouldn't get no visitation from none of my homies and nothing like that, right? And I don't view them no different type of way, but that's
reality, right?
That's just the game, right? So I just had to realize that, and I knew that I wanted out. My dad wasn't around when I was growing up. So I didn't want my kids to have to come see me through a glass. I didn't want me to be like, all right, well, my dad wasn't around. I ain't learned how to be a dad. So I ain't going to be a dad. I was like, I want to figure this thing out because I don't want to set my son up, now sons, to be in a situation where they got to figure this thing out. Just like I had to figure it out. At least not by choice. You know, some of them, they still want to go out and figure it out on their own.
That's
anyway.
right. That's right.
And to your point, you said a lot of people think our young black men are lazy. So I tell people all the time, because I do a class every Thursday for youth entrepreneurs, and I work with a lot of what they call at-risk youth, right? And they out moving around. But I always tell adults who look at the youth like that, is like, they're not lazy. We just haven't given them anything to put their energy into, right? Because if they're on the block, like, you can't be lazy to be on the block.
And be on the block all day in the heat.
They robbing, they doing all this. You can't be lazy. You got to be strategic to make a lot of moves. We just haven't shown them anything productive to put it into. And they've seen so many of our generations fail. We telling them, go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a job, work there 30, 40 years. They don't know nobody that play has worked for. So by them being brilliant, like you said, they're like, that don't work. Let me go figure out another play. I see the music cats, they winning. Let me go that route. Or I see the robbers going this route. Let me go that route. Because they see this is something that's productive in their mind, but the people around them telling them to go get a job, it's like it's not productive.
So you think it's systematic? Or do you think we need to stop blaming the system and say, okay, what do you think?
I think we got to stop blaming the system.
Okay.
And I think we got to take responsibility. Like, there's a lot of cats be still talking about, man, we were slaves. We're in this situation because we were slaves. It's like, all right, like, how long? It's 2022.
How long? Yeah. I do think that systematically speaking, there are things that are in place to discourage. And for the 90% that are not part of the talented 10, they can easily become distracted, right? And that's what they're banking on, is the distraction of it and the frustration of life, right? How did you not allow all the things that you had working against you not to frustrate you?
Because I had already took losses at the highest level. It's like, I always had the mindset of like, what do I have to lose? Like, I come from a world where it's like, when I leave out every day, it's like, I don't know if I'm coming home that day. I could end up in jail. Like, I'm in a crazy environment. So it's like, when I came into business, like legit business, I was like, this is sweet. It's like, what's the worst thing that somebody can tell you? Like, people in network marketing, they was like, they're uncomfortable, people telling them no. And I'm like, telling you no? I'm like, so you telling me the worst thing that can happen is somebody tell me no? And if I can get through enough of them, I can make millions? Like, I'm going to kill this. It's like, I've been held at gunpoint. We've been in shootouts. We've been in crazy environments. So it's like, legit business, like, what's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst?
You lose all your money?
And, the other part of it is, I think also the reason why most people can't stand to hear the word no is because they lack confidence in certain areas. And most of us, all of us, are born with a lack of confidence. Confidence comes from experience and building yourself up enough to know that you can do it. Where did your confidence come from?
Where did my confidence come from? Probably. If I was the first thing that came to my mind, I would probably say my mom.
Your mom, because I can see you would stand face to face with a Grant Cardone on the Tony Robbins and clearly stand
for sure
and with all the confidence and say we're equals at the table.
Not even equals, like, because I think we have an advantage.
Okay.
Because a lot of these cats ain't went through what we've gone through.
Right.
So we have that advantage of everything that we've gone through, and not taking away from nothing that they've done or what they've built, but it's like, like a lot of these cats, and again, this ain't no excuse, but a lot of these cats started off 20 laps ahead of us.
Not a lot, all of them.
Yeah, so for somebody to start, if we're racing,
right,
and you get 20 laps on me, and then they tell me to go, and I still catch you up, and we in the same game, it's like, hey, the playing field is level.
But let me ask you this. How do you feel about, I notice how some of them now are romanticizing the hood life. They're trying to relate because, right now, as you know, all of the big dogs such as them are trying to romanticize African-American millennials because we right now, the millennial African-American community have disposable income.
100%.
Everybody knows that, right? So that's what all of the white speakers and targets are going after. They're going after our dollar.
Yes.
So now they're trying to relate.
Yep.
You know, maybe it's the vernacular, maybe it's the way they dress, maybe it's their type of advertisement. And this is natural for us because it's who we are. But for them, I see them trying to sometimes emulate. And I don't know how I feel about that.
They've always wanted to be us, though. So, like, you got to think.
Do you think they want to be us, or do they want to get our money?
I think both. I think they want to pander us to get our money, just like they want to get our votes. And they've always stolen our culture. So it's like mostly.
But do they want to be? Do they really want to? You know, being us.
They want the benefits.
The benefits.
Not the other. It's kind of like I always tell kids, especially my kids. It's like you want the luxuries of being an adult without responsibility. So you want the luxury of being black without the responsibility of being black, right? So it's like, how can I pander to them to get this, like to get my votes, right? So it's like, yeah, we're gonna tell you this isn't the 30 vote. So like, for example, I was chatting back and forth with a white guy earlier, and he was like, in the text, he was like, Lemmy. Lemme. So I was talking to one of my team members. I'm like, you see, he said let me, right? So it's like, it was like bro and all this. And I get it, but it's like,
it doesn't piss you off.
No, it don't. It's funny to me.
That gets me hot.
Nah, it's funny to me.
I'm like you. It's funny.
It's funny. It's funny to me because I see it.
Okay,
so
you know what it is.
Recognize game, right? So I can see the game, so it's funny to me, and it's more so funny because they don't think I realize it, which makes it even funnier, right? So I see it happening. So like, I'm gonna give you an example. So like, I unsubscribed to Grant Cardone. You mentioned Grant Cardone, and I tell a lot of black people, I'm like, are we still doing business with this dude? Because this dude did a podcast, and he basically was like he got a lot of friends who were black, and he was like, he's so tapped in with the black community, he should be able to say the N-word. You heard him say that?
I heard about this.
He was. I'm like, what? So he was like, I should be able to say the N-word because I'm so tapped in with the black community. And he was like, if anybody out there, if you give me permission to say the N-word, hit me up. I'm like, is this dude serious? And now when I look up a lot of the big black stages, he's on the stages because a lot of times people think that white is right and their ice is colder. So it's like, how we still doing business with dude? Do we just gonna act like he ain't say this, and then people are justified and say, well, we just gonna get the information from it. I know how to get the information and, you know, not tied to the person.
But you're not just getting the information, you're putting money in his pocket.
100%.
Right?
And sharing them and promoting them and then sharing them with our people and all this other stuff.
And, you know, my biggest thing with all of it really is making sure that we understand that we are more powerful than what we think.
Yep.
The fact that the masses are trying to connect with us, specifically because of our dollar, and you have so many of us trying to run away from who we are. I don't think we really realize still the power. Right. I remember very early on, Marquel, you know, because I have a PR marketing branding company. I remember some of my earlier clients would say stuff like, okay, you can create our website, but don't put our, you know, faces that look like us on there. They wanted faces that did not represent us on their page because they thought that made them more mainstream. Meanwhile, all of the major corporations are trying to find ways to relate to the diversity.
Yep.
Right? And I've always wondered, why do we run away? Because people tend to do business with folks that they're most comfortable with. Most comfortable that they can relate to. So if right now you got the Grants and Tonys and everybody else that are trying to get our attention, you have a higher chance of getting our attention. But do you find that our people are less likely to do business with you and go to Grant because he is not black?
Many times, because again, it goes back to the self-hate, right? And we don't really understand who we are. So it's like, so they'll say, okay, yeah, I know Marquel does this, but I'm gonna go do business with this white dude because of how we view ourselves, right? So like for me personally, and this is my philosophy, if I want to do business or I require a service, I'm looking for a black person first. I'm not just doing business with somebody because they black. So let me be clear.
Me too.
I always tell people like, your service has to be
stellar,
excellence and stellar as well. I ain't just settling and doing business because you're black. And on the other hand, there's white people who do subpar business as well. So let's just not be clear. Let's not just act like subpar service is a black thing. It's a business.
And that burns me up. I hate when I hear people say, this is why I don't go to black restaurants. So this way, I'm like, you done been to a gazillion restaurants, had bad service, all these other places, and now because you got it at black restaurants, I'm not doing no more black business. Right?
Now you go share this on social media and all that. But when you went to Olive Garden, you ain't do that. When you went to Ruth's Chris, you ain't do all that. When you went to whatever, you ain't do all that.
You didn't do all that, but you get so what is it though, Marquel, when we start talking about, because you do lead generations, right? And you do it for high dollar amounts.
Yeah.
I think the biggest piece about what you do is going to have to be sociology, because you have to change the mindset of your clients, right? Sure. In order for a person to be able to stand across from somebody and say, you're going to pay me $20,000, you're going to pay me $40,000, you have to have a certain level of confidence in yourself and in your business. Yeah. So do the folks come to you already with the confidence, or is that something that you also have to work with them on?
Many times we got to work with them on it, because that's a big reason they aren't willing to charge what we're advising them to charge or what they could be charging. And a lot of it comes to the program, and it's like, we've been told, and they'll see, like you said, their white counterparts charging that, but we've been told that, well, since you're black, you got to work 10 times harder. Or you can't do that. Or because you're a woman, you got to work 10 times harder.
So our grandparents kind of messed us up when they told us
For sure.
that. And we don't realize that we shouldn't have to work harder. No. You should be, the end goal is to work less. Yeah. And make more.
100%.
Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so.
And then we come from, because I know where I'm from, it's like, if somebody makes $30 an hour, it's like, they the man. It's like.
You got a good job.
You got a good job. Like, you work for the city, and you make $30 an hour, like where I'm from, everybody want to get a job working for the city.
Or the post office.
Right. I was like, no, I'm good. But they were like $34 an hour, you drive a Lincoln, you all this, like you doing. So now you start your own business, and you like, well, if I make $100 an hour, that's good money. And it's like, well, if you do the math, it really ain't.
But let's back up a little bit, because I was talking to my son about this probably about a month or so ago. He has a friend that just recently was released from jail. Mm-hmm. And I think he had obtained a felony. Mm-hmm. Did you get a felony?
Yeah, I did.
So with that, I was having that conversation with my son because he was like, Mom, what is he going to do now? Da-da-da-da. I was like, life is not over. He's still young. I said, first of all, because had you not had the felony, you may have nestled into a 9-to-5, got real comfortable. But you had to figure it out another way, because that wasn't an option, right? And that was one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up, is because some people use the excuse of, well, I can't do this because I have a felony, and I can't do this because of that. You're saying, even in spite of all of these things, I'm still sitting here before you today, one of the most sought after businessmen in what you do.
Yeah. Right. So I always tell people, like, what you see as your greatest disadvantage is actually your greatest advantage. Mm-hmm. So I saw that I dropped out of high school as a disadvantage. It's actually an advantage. Mm-hmm. The fact that I was a felon, am a felon, still working on getting that cleared up, is an advantage, right? If some people may say, okay, you're black, that's a disadvantage. It's actually an advantage.
But why would you say dropping out of high school was an advantage?
Because I would say it's an advantage, because that's part of my story that you can't duplicate that. Mm-hmm. Like you can't fake that, right? Mm-hmm. And I dropped out of high school and still was able to navigate and still end up where I am. So that's just a unique part of my story that most people can't steal. A lot of people try to steal your stuff, but it's like, you can't steal that.
That's just who you are. When you dropped out, though, because you're brilliant, right?
Thank you.
So were you one of the straight A students up into 9th grade and then dropped out? Like, what was your grades and stuff? Because I can't believe.
Yeah, so I had like A's and B's all the way up to like middle school until I just like lost interest. You know what I'm saying? And like 8th grade, I started going off the handle a little bit, but I just wasn't interested.
So what happened?
So in 8th grade, so like everybody was like into gangs. So I started a gang, right? So I started a gang one time, and then I said, look, we all gonna wear all black on our hall.
You started the gang. Yeah. Again, whatever you touch, you leading it. Yeah. So you started the gang.
Yeah, I started the gang, and then because I was heavy into like West Coast culture as well, and of course, if you follow West Coast
down
culture,
here in Georgia, talking about West Coast. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna put it up.
Yeah.
Y'all couldn't try to do no Easy E down here in Georgia now. Y'all was doing Easy.
I wasn't doing Easy E, but I was like I was into like Chucks and like Dickies.
Okay.
You know, and they're into gang culture heavy, right? Yeah. And gangs were never meant to be negative, actually, initially.
It was a family.
Right, exactly. It was like about community.
Did you feel like you needed that because your dad wasn't there?
Probably.
Do you think it would have been different if dad was there?
I can't say because I don't know what kind of dad he would have been.
So let me ask you this. So where was somebody, was there anybody in the community that said, okay, Marquel, this young, bright, smart kid, something is going on that's causing him to go off track? Nobody, no guidance counselor, nobody?
Not really. I mean, because I was always more quiet into myself as well. So I was more of a thinker and a watcher and a mover like that. So I was just like watching. Like my mom was a hustler. Like my granddad was a hustler. So the people who I looked up to in the hood was a hustler. So I was like, it was more so like, hey, don't be down there on the porch with them. Like they ain't doing right. You know what I'm saying? So I like gravitated toward that type of energy. My cousins who I looked up to so dope. So it's like that's who I gravitated to.
It's exposure.
It was exposure. So I was like, you ask a regular family member, like, hey, can I get $1 to go to the candy lady? And they're like, they don't got no money. Like, money don't grow on trees, all this different type of stuff. But I asked my cousin, they give me a 5 or a 10 or a 15. On my birthday, my granddad used to give us a 50. But he was a big dope boy. So it's like, and I'm watching all that, but they think we young and they don't see nothing. But I'm like, I'm super observant. I'm seeing when my mom go re-up with my granddad. And so I was like all around that.
It's not about what they said don't do. You were watching about, it's again what you absorb from the environment.
Yeah, I always tell people like kids watch what you do. They don't hear what you say.
What you say, right?
They hear you, but it's like they watching what you do.
Yeah, because I always tell my son, money don't grow on trees. Get up out of here asking for some more money. Get out of here, you know? Every time I turn around, you asking for something. But yeah, so, but again, watching the environment. But nobody ever said, this young man is brilliant and we got to do something about, or did they say, let's let him lead the family business?
Not really. Not.
So nobody, were you invisible?
I wasn't invisible. I think some of the biggest game that I got. So I grew up hip hop. We talked about hip hop earlier, and so I grew up on the UGKs and the 8-ball and MJGs and all that. So you always heard about you got to have the fattest sacks on the block. So when I started hustling, I used to stuff my sacks. So I had a.
So what's the sack? Oh, the sack is what?
The sack is like what your product is in. So it's like the bag that it's in.
Because you got to break. Okay, so hold on. You got to break it down because see, I'm not from Georgia.
Right.
I'm from VA.
Okay, so I got to break it down.
You should break it down. A sack is what now?
The bag. So like for example, so let's say I get an ounce of weed. I'll just use weed for example. So now I get these little baggies. So depends on where you're from, you probably see the little baggies on the ground. So you take those baggies and then you break it down and you fill the baggies up. And then you sell those individually for whatever you're selling it for.
Okay.
Right? So I used to get mines and like make them real fat because that's what I heard in the music. That's how I was learning. However, one of my homies who I used to re-up with, when I used to go see him, re-up mean going to get more, right? So like
I knew that one.
Right.
I knew re-up.
So higher, get more of it. So I was going to do that. And one day he was like, man, because I was going just taking the same money. I was having just enough to re-up. And he was like, man, what's going on? So he looked at my bags and he was like, you put in too much in here. And he was like, each bag should weigh something. So he was like, and the bag weighs something. Like the bag weighs something by itself.
Right.
So he was like, every bag, if you're selling it for 10 or 15, it should weigh this. This should weigh this. This should weigh this. So now I started bagging it up differently. And now I could see, okay, I spend 50, make 100. Spend 100, make 200. I could see it based on I understood that and I had the scale and all that. So that was some of the biggest game that I got early on, which helped me win in that area. And of course, like my mom used to give me game, like when I used to get in trouble, like, you know, your parents always think you're being the follower a lot of times. So
and
like,
you the leader.
Yeah, don't make
because you the leader.
Right. She's always be like, don't be a follower, don't be a follower. And she always used to say, Russells are leaders, Russells are leaders, Russells are leaders. So that's still been embedded in me ever since then. Of course, I still tell my boys the same thing, my kids the same thing. So it's like, it was just those things that I was just picking up, you know, along the way.
You know, it's amazing though, because can you imagine where many people in your family could have been with the type of exposure that you had?
For sure.
A totally different life.
Yep. And the big thing is like, even so, like a lot of people don't know this, that up to third grade, I met my mom when I was in third grade, like my biological mom. Prior to that, I actually lived with my aunt, who was like a crackhead, for the lack of better terms, right? So I was around that. I knew I could smell crack being burned in the house, so that was all around. And like her husband was in Desert Storm, so this was in the Desert Storm time, and he used to send back, you know what the MRE is? So we used to eat MREs. So for those who don't know the MREs, it's called meals ready to eat.
Right.
So it's like vacuum sealed. They used to take them out in the field. So like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it was normal for me to have MREs. So like I grew up in that environment. So when you grow up in that, you at the bottom. It's like you want anything but this, and you're gonna figure out how to get out of this by any means necessary.
And you still made A's and B's as a child going through that.
Yeah, I made A's and B's for the most part. I used to get A's and B's, and I used to typically get like needs to control talking.
Yeah, I used to get that too. I think all of the ones who end up
talking.
I always look back at Miss Lawrence. Remember you told me to stop talking so much?
And I wouldn't even like the loud. I wouldn't even like the loud, disrespectful cat. I'm like in the back just chopping it up.
Yeah, I was never a bad kid. I just like to talk.
I just like to talk.
To
the people I like to talk to.
Too, right? Because I had something to say. Let me say what I have to say. But let's go back though. So that's no joke though. Mm-hmm. So up into third grade, did you know that mom wasn't there?
No, I thought this was I thought my aunt was my mom.
So you thought that was her. Yeah. So where was mom?
So my mom was young when she had me. So she was out.
How old was she?
She was 18, 19.
Okay.
So she was out wilding early on. I ended up having 2 other sisters, but she was out wilding doing her thing, and I just ended up with my aunt on my dad's side. So yeah, I didn't meet her until third grade, and then she basically came and took me back.
But you know what I think is dope though? Even though your aunt had an addiction, she still tuck you in.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, again, Russells are leaders.
Yep,
right? Sure. Was she a Russell?
No, she wasn't a Russell.
She wasn't a Russell. But it's still in your blood because I'm telling you, people could have used the excuse, I can't take care of somebody else. I'm battling with this myself.
Yep.
But she didn't want to see you go into the foster system.
100%.
That's amazing. So big ups to your aunt. Is she still alive?
No, she's
today?
not alive anymore.
But no, that. I think a lot of times we focus on the faults but the fact that she said, I'm not letting my baby be on the street.
Oh, 100%.
Is a big deal. And made sure whether it was MREs or not, you ate.
100%.
You ate, right?
Absolutely.
So you came from a family of love. And that's another thing that people have to realize is that love looks different.
Absolutely.
Right? People are going to love the way that they can. And we have to accept that and not use that as an excuse, but understand that I was loved the best way that I could be loved, right?
Absolutely.
So you're now married, father.
Yep.
Okay, so do you tell your kids about your humble beginnings?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, how old are your kids?
So my youngest is 2.
Okay.
I have a 7-year-old. I have an 8-year-old who will be 9 on the 13th of July. I have an 18-year-old. So my first son, he just graduated high school. So he'll be 19 in September.
That's a big deal, yeah.
And I have a 20-year-old daughter.
Okay, so are they all working in the family business?
They aren't. So my oldest son, he has a clothing brand.
Okay.
He's about to relaunch it, so he's doing his thing, but he like to figure stuff out on his own.
Okay.
I got my daughter, she's doing her own thing. She was going to school for dentistry, found out she didn't really want to do that, so she got her job now. So she kind of working her move.
Okay.
My 8-year-old son, he has a clothing brand, but he's 8, so he's still trying to figure it out. Like I tell him, like, don't do the clothing brand because I want you to do it. Do it because you want to do it.
Well, you want him to do it?
No.
Oh, okay. So
because he asked me one day because he was doing basketball, so I had him working with a trainer because he was like he want to go to the NBA, he want to play basketball. I'm like, well, we need to get you a trainer. So I got him a trainer. He was kind of like some days he'd be excited, some days he wasn't. And then one day he was kind of like he mentioned that he was kind of doing it because I wanted him to do it. I'm like, well, I don't want you to do it. And he was like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, I want you to figure out what you want to do, and I support you with that. But it's not that like some guy when I was growing up with my 18-year-old son. When he was like 7 or 8, cats at the barbershop used to be like, hey, you need to make him play football. And I'm like, well, no, he didn't really want to play football right now. They're like, oh, my son don't care. Because a lot of us, our people in our culture, we're looking for our children to be our ticket.
A ticket out of here, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and we need to be the ticket for them.
Yeah. I ain't looking for my kids to be the ticket.
I'm not either. I mean, so I think the question I always ask, what do you have to leave your family? Because one thing is for sure, if you leave this earth and you're not leaving something for your family, have you really lived?
100%.
Right?
100%.
So, yeah, I noticed that. We want to push the kids into a bunch of stuff that's not really healthy for them.
I talk to entrepreneurs and they be like, oh, I'm going to build this business and I'm going to leave this business to my kids.
But how you know your
kids want this business?
Right,
your kids might not want it. Your kids might want to be a teacher.
And guess what? If they don't want to do the business, you should create a business that they can liquidate, take the money and be able to do what they want to do, right? But one thing is for sure, I'll tell you this though, Marquel, people need to also make sure they have trust and things of that nature.
Bingo.
Because people will run through your money that you worked your whole life for very easily.
100%.
Right? Very, very, very easily. So look, we got to also talk about this hip hop. Okay, so I bet you it's going to be interesting to hear your top 10 because you are a Southerner.
Yeah.
You're from Georgia. And, hip hop in Georgia came along way later than they did on the East Coast, you know? Because I remember when back in the day it was just East Coast, West Coast. And then, you know, you guys came in and kind of took it by storm. So let's talk about your top 10. So let's start from the bottom all the way up to you. The top is number 1. Who's your top 10 hip hop artist?
Of all time?
Of all time.
Of all time, it's Tupac.
Okay, that's your number 1?
That's my number 1.
Okay, that's number 1. Yeah. Let's start from the bottom.
I'll start from the bottom.
Start from the bottom.
So from the bottom, I don't really have one like at the bottom.
Okay, well, give me your top.
So my top. So I'll give you my top 10 off the top of my head. I like Tupac. I like Jadakiss. I like Lil Baby.
Lil Baby.
I like Lil Baby.
You think he's one of the best of all time?
I think he's dope. I think especially with this newer culture. I'm just giving you this off the top of my head.
Okay.
So I like Meek Mill.
Oh yeah, Meek is bad.
Yeah, I like Hove. I like Jay-Z. Mm-hmm. I was late on Jay-Z though. I wasn't on Jay-Z.
You're the second person that came up in here, y'all. Okay, I am Miss Jay-Z.
I was late on Jay-Z.
What's going on?
I didn't appreciate Jay-Z early on.
You know what? You're the second person.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate him early on.
What was okay? Look, I'll let you go through your list and we'll go back to Jay.
So I like Pusha T. You from Virginia?
Pusha T.
I like Pusha T.
Rap.
I was huge on the Clips. Still is. I still
the
rock
Clips
with
got a bad deal, man. They got a bad deal.
Mm-hmm. I like artistry. I like. You ever heard of Sci-Hi the Prince? Sci-Hi the Prince. You got to check him out. Like,
had you heard of him, Fonzie?
Listen.
Well, Fonzie. Yeah, I know. I haven't heard of him. So is he an educational rapper?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lyrically,
is he rocking with Nas? Is he
lyrically? Nobody is seeing him. Lyrically,
he can't. So you talking about he's better than Nas or KRS-One?
Lyrically, 100%.
Is KRS-One? Are you familiar with KRS-One? Because it may be before your time.
Yeah, he ain't in my top 10 though.
KRS-One should be in everybody's top 10. No. I don't understand that.
I think
he's one of the baddest lyricists that ever hit.
I couldn't ride around listening to him though. Nah.
The bridge is over?
Nah. So Nas.
What is going on?
I'll go with Nas.
Okay.
I'll go with Nas over.
All right.
Over KRS-One. Not saying KRS-One ain't dope.
KRS-One is one of the baddest that ever
That's kind of like me saying Big Daddy Kane one of mine, and he's not.
Well, but listen, Big Daddy, okay, to take away the commercials, this is what I think happened with Big Daddy. He became too commercial. But Big Daddy, from a lyricist perspective, because see, I'm a lyricist. I used to rap.
Did you?
Yes.
I can see that on you though.
MC Glamorous One was my name.
I can believe that.
Glamorous One.
I can see your swag.
Yeah, I was a rapper, and I was one of the baddest that ever did it from where I was from, right? I actually thought I was going to be a rapper. I was going to go on tour and stuff. My mom was like, you going to go on and get on to that college there, okay? So she stopped me. But when I tell you that KRS-One is one, when you listen to the lyrics, when you listen to Big Daddy Kane, the lyrics, it's just because he became too commercial.
I can believe that.
Like LL. LL is a dope lyricist too.
Will Smith is a dope lyricist.
I was just talking about that not too long ago. Will Smith is phenomenal with lyrics, but the problem is I think people began looking at him more as a joke because of his persona, but he is dope.
Yeah, he's dope.
He's dope.
I also like UGK.
Okay.
8 Ball and MJG.
Okay.
Did you grow up on any of these?
I grew up on them, but I was East Coast, Virginia, so I remember hearing about all, but I wasn't really like jamming them in my car.
You like Jadakiss? I'm not Jadakiss. Jim Jones. Jim Jones.
Not really.
Jim Jones is dope. He's super underrated. Jim Jones is dope. The best. I used to argue this all the time. The best. Who's your favorite New York all the time?
Of all time, yeah. Biggie. Okay, cool. What about? So my favorite from up north. When I was growing up, everybody used to be on Jay-Z, but I used to always tell people Jadakiss is doper than Jay-Z. Doper than Jay-Z?
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm surprised that you would say that because Jay-Z's such a brilliant businessman. I would have thought you would have connected with him on the business side.
So just lyrically, because Jada talks that talk where I come from.
Right.
I could tell Jada used to be out there moving around.
So he wasn't faking it like your boy. Okay, I love him though, but Rick Ross wasn't really in the streets, was he? He was a parole officer or what?
So I read his memoir.
Okay.
And he was basically like a season of his life, he was a paroler. He was a CO. Mm-hmm. And it was strategic. But prior to that, leading up to it, he was in the streets. I don't know, but that's just what he said in the
But I love me some Rick. So let me make sure to clarify. Rick Ross now, you put some Rick on and I'm going crazy.
Rick is dope.
I'm going crazy. But I noticed something. You didn't give none of the women any props. You mean tell me there's not a woman out here?
So I'm not done yet. So
okay.
my favorite of all time group is Outkast.
Okay.
So Outkast, Goody Mob.
Okay.
Right.
So you are true Atlanta.
Oh yeah, for sure. Outkast, Goody Mob. Ladies, my favorite ladies is the one that comes to my mind is Mia X. You familiar with Mia X?
Familiar with Mia X.
So I grew up on Master P. You know what I'm saying?
Master P. Yeah.
So in my top 10,
I think Master P is a brilliant businessman, lyricist. Nah.
No, not a lyricist, but he's a brilliant
businessman, and he knew what would sell.
Yeah.
He knew what would be catchy, what sold in the clubs, and would get people to. But lyrics.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, no disrespect, ladies, for watching. It's like in my top 10, I can't think of.
You can't think of. So you mean to tell me you don't think Nicki is cold?
Minaj? I think Nicki Minaj is cold, but I'm not gonna be around listening to Nicki Minaj.
What?
No.
I'll put Nicki in my playlist and go crazy.
I couldn't be out and be reciting Nicki's lyrics.
Yeah.
I couldn't be out reciting a Nicki
That's
bar.
true, because I would wonder if you rolled up and I heard you blasting Nicki, I'm gonna look
and I turn Nicki and I pull up and I let my window down and I listen to Nicki.
I'm gonna be looking at you. I'm like, Marquel, okay, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, or Cardi B. Like,
okay, so but the difference, but I think this though, Cardi, I love Cardi, but I'm a lyricist. So I'm really big on writing your own rhymes. And I know today, in today's market, it's like, it doesn't matter who writes it. It's about what it sells and stuff. But to me, unless you were pen to paper.
I agree.
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. And let me say this, though. One thing that bothers me, I should say, about women hip hop is it's only one type of women hip hop that sells.
It's all about the stripper movement, right?
That's it.
Right. And when Jermaine Dupri tried to speak out on it, everybody was mad about it. But I thought it needed to be said because right now it's all about, devaluing yourself as a woman in order to get the spin.
That's the only thing you hear, the Megs. And again, this ain't no disrespect to the ladies. I get it's a business play, right? But it's like if you think about the top women artists, it's like that's all you hear.
It's really disappointing.
It's very disappointing.
Yeah.
However, it's our fault too because we entertain it. Yeah. So it's our fault too at the same time.
Yeah, it is our fault because we just want to hear something fun and.
I heard 21 Savage say one time. 21 Savage was basically like, who's another brilliant business guy who a lot of people sleep on. He was basically I think I heard Future say it also. He was like, man, we don't even drink lean and be high like that all the time. He was like, that's just what they want to listen to, so that's what we give to them.
Meanwhile, the kids on the street dying off of fentanyl.
That's our fault. Yeah. We entertain it. We
dying.
Because I even tell my kids, it's like, I don't have an issue with listening to the trap music, but you got to listen to it for entertainment.
And not really listen to it and let it absorb in your body,
it's entertainment.
Right?
Like I listen to music. Like when I hit the gym, I'm working out or I'm riding. I like to turn on a vibe. You know what I'm saying? But it's like I can separate the two.
Yeah, and I wonder, many times when I think about our community, I don't even wonder, I already know, how the music could be damaging the kids, right? To think that that's the way they have to live.
For sure. Especially if we're not having a conversation about it. Somebody else who's dope is Lecrae. You listen to Lecrae?
I do, but I wouldn't put. So I'm surprised you King of the South. You from
Tip?
Yeah.
Tip is.
How you didn't say Tip? So you from down here?
I'm a hip hop guy, so when you put me on it, like, hey, who's my top 10?
So Tip is not really a lyricist to you?
Oh, Tip is for sure. Tip is in my top 10.
Okay.
For sure. Lyrics. I've been on Tip since the PSC mixtapes.
Okay.
Like when he came out with I'm Serious, that was his first one, and then he got out of that deal, and then he went back straight independent. So they did the mixtapes, the PSC 1, 2, and 3. Like, yeah, for sure.
You know what I like about it too? Fonz had put me on. His son is dope.
Damani? Yeah, he's super dope.
Is that his name? Fonz? Yeah, I heard him rapping the other day on a award show on Fox Soul. I said, who is this cat? And he was like, that's Tip's son. I was like, this guy, and I like the fact that I was like, who is this cat before I knew it was Tip's son.
Yeah, it's gonna be the only thing is it's gonna be an uphill battle for him because his content is different. Like he really talking about something.
He is awake.
But as he's dealing, what's cool about him is he's gonna build a really dope community like J. Cole.
Yeah.
But it ain't like you ain't gonna hear it in the club or. But he really
like Common and stuff like that. But you know what I think is dope about him is the authenticity of it, because 100%. He didn't have to grow up in a trap house.
And he talk about it.
Right. He didn't have to do that. And so he shouldn't talk about something that he didn't have to do. So I think that's dope for him, right?
I agree 100%.
But I do, it is bothering me that our women are not finding its place outside of the strip club and in the rap world. We got to really talk about changing that a little bit, right? Sure. Because the thing is, let me ask you this, one of the things I've always talked about is passing the throne respectfully. I think that the way that Nicki and Lil' Kim handled things and how Nicki handled things with Cardi, it just looks like we don't, as women, know how to handle and pass the throne. Whereas with the men, I see the support, right? When Meek, he was trying to get out of prison, there was Jay, even though now I see some drama. Did you see that?
I saw like a
little snip about
I saw like
that.
a headline or something. I ain't really read into it though.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit. So I saw that what the headline was saying was that
Rock Nation.
Right, because he said that he wasn't really getting his money from the management deal. Sounded a little bit like the way Tupac was feeling towards the end with Suge. Because remember, Suge got him out.
If I don't hear Meek speak on it,
Meek was the one who actually made the statement. I didn't hear it, but he made it. I didn't.
You see what I'm saying? So that's the tricky thing about the internet.
Right.
The internet is about clickbait.
That's true.
Because Meek also got a bigger play he do with Jay-Z with the reform. So it's like I can imagine if he ain't getting his bag in one deal, that affects the other play that they doing with
something
reform.
else.
So it's like if Meek ain't saying it, did somebody get a sound bite and then just turn this into something, some blogger or something? Because they want to get more clicks, or is this like something? Is it
really? Well, the other thing I love about what hip hop has matured into is that I see so many people really making a business out of this, right? They get their money, they get their bag from the actual music, but then they've Nas, he was one of the top investors in Ring. I mean, technology was off the chain. To see what Master P took his money and did, to see what Jay,
Chameleonaire.
It's just amazing, and it makes you proud when you can see that. And Jay, a lot of people gave Jay a lot of crap for this, but I just say you guys don't understand what power means when he's able to sit at the table with the NFL leaders and say, "This is what I want. If you don't give me this is." You have to have that to have power.
Because most people playing checkers, they don't understand.
They don't understand the chess.
No.
Even Diddy. One of the biggest things I have a big pet peeve on is that people don't understand the difference between business and friendship. Right. When people always say, well, Diddy, he did this to his artist and he did that, and this person died and they died destitute. Is it Diddy's responsibility to take care of this person for the rest of their life? Or is it his responsibility to give you an opportunity? You need to get the attorney to make sure your contracts are in state. And when you get your money, you need to have a financial advisor. Yep. So when is it no longer Diddy's fault?
People don't take responsibility.
Never do.
People still we got grown folks who still blaming their mom for not being around.
Or their great granddad.
It's like, when do we gotta take personal responsibility?
Right.
And until we do that, it's like, as a culture, it's like, until we do that, it's like we blaming the president, like gas prices up and all this is the president's fault. It's like,
it's everybody's fault,
it's
right?
Everybody's fault. And now on another note, it's like, if gas is affecting you like that, that's your fault.
Your fault.
You see what I'm saying? And not in no elitist type of way, but it's like, all right, well, if gas is affecting me, what can I do? Complaining on social media ain't gonna make the gas prices go down.
Anything on social, people kill me when they call themselves doing protests on social media.
Yeah,
it's a big waste. But at the end of the day, I think for us, the accountability is what, and that's one of the words that I think I would say this podcast has left me with is accountability and ownership. You never. Since you sat here, you didn't have a sad song. You didn't blame anybody. And you talked about the situation in which you came in with pride and respect and homage for those that came before you. And I think that's what we need to get out of this, is that regardless of what your upbringing was like, that was the foundation for the success that's coming, right?
For sure.
So what can we expect? What's next for you?
We just growing. We're growing, helping a lot of people create a lot of success stories. To date, we've helped our clients do over $1 billion in revenue.
Billion?
$1 billion.
So how are you measuring that?
So the biggest thing we make, like publicly, nobody ever see. We never talk about like how much money we make, the cars we drive, none of the type of stuff. That's not really excites me. What excites me is like when our clients report their numbers to us, because we give away big checks and awards and all that. So that's kind of how we measure, because we're looking at our client success story. And it's more than that, but we can't measure because a lot of our clients we don't hear from. Right.
So is it like an organization that one would join? Like, do you have conferences or something when you said big checks and stuff? Because when you said big checks, my eyes blew up.
Yeah, so we have a client called, our company is called Client Attraction University.
Okay.
Right. And we typically, we do an event twice a year for our clients. And at this event, of course, we teach and train. However, we also celebrate our clients. So based on how much money they made since working with us, we give them these big old checks. Right?
So do they have to come to you already with the product or service, or does your business help them determine what their product and service is? How does that work?
So we mainly work with like expert businesses. So like people who make money from their knowledge and expertise, or they want to. So maybe they're already a coach or a consultant or a service provider, and they want to attract more clients. We help them with that. Or maybe they're an author or a speaker. Now they want to create a more leveraged offer to attract people to them. So we help them create that. Or maybe let's say, for example, they transition from corporate America. They're really good. They can help people excel in their career, and they want to create something online so they can attract people to them. So we help them with that piece. As long as they have the expertise, we can help them package that expertise.
So they can't come to you with nothing saying, because I get people sometimes to come to me, Marquel, and they're like, make me a star. I'm like, what is it that you do though?
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to have something.
You got to have some expertise.
You got to have some expertise. Yeah. And your price points are not cheap either. So when people call that line, don't call there talking about my cousin is so
we ain't cheap. We ain't cheap.
Right. But you gotta pay. You gotta invest in yourself. And so, do you also help them do it, or do you just show them what to do?
So we do it with them.
Okay.
So we do it with them. We walk in, we're like, hey, we partner with our clients. So it's like, hey, this is what we doing. Here's how we do it. Do this, do this, do this. And if they got a team, of course, we got them with their team and so forth. So we like more partnership and then showing them how to do it step by step.
Okay, that's amazing. So, Marquel, I really want to say thank you so much for coming out today. I know that you're very busy, and the fact that you took the time out to come and spend some time with us on our first season of Coinology, and also being so open, transparent, and authentic. I think your story is going to help a whole lot of people that's out there trying to figure it out and thinks that it's over for them. It's so far from being over for them.
Absolutely.
But thanks a lot, and I want to say tune in to us in the next 2 weeks, Fonzie, as we bring the next edition of Coinology. See you guys next time. Welcome to Coinology, the podcast.